It's Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers with tips and advice on landscaping and gardening. Here's Fernando Martinez.
Hello, and welcome, Central Coast of California. I love being here, living here, and working here on the Central Coast. Thanks for tuning in to another show of Patio Side Chats here today. Today's topic, I want to talk about a few different things. Number one, I want to talk about hiring contractors in general to either do work for you when you decide that you don't want to take on a project for whatever reason, even if you could do it and had, better things to do with your time other than doing the project. Or if you're, thinking maybe you don't have the expertise for it. For any number of reasons, we get older and smarter. We don't want to bust our backs out there and knees and, rack our brains and having to deal with all the vendors and materials and deliveries, and sometimes it's easier to hire somebody else to do the job. So I wanted to talk about that process of deciding on a company and what, kind of helps you make that decision of who to go with. And so that, and I also want to talk about a little bit about hardscaping and pavers towards the end of the show. And really, because we get some pretty common questions out there, I wanted to go over, like, do I need to remove the concrete to put the pavers down? Some cases, yes, some cases, no. When do I, if you don't want to remove the concrete, could be, tiling could be an option, or, what are some of the options there? And when people have bad experience with pavers, I want to kind of go over what the bad experiences were and why, maybe kind of address that, because it's a couple of topics have come up this week for me, and I wanted to address those. So let's jump right into it and talk about hiring contractors. What helps us make a really good decision on hiring? Because it is a big decision, in my opinion. I think it can really either bring you a lot of grief if it doesn't go well, and it can be a very pleasurable experience if everything works out like you think. I want you to think of it as though you're a company and you're hiring a new employee, and you're really going through that interviewing process during the initial estimate. So when the contractor comes out to give you that bid and you're interviewing, they're kind of seeing what you want, and they're supposed to get you a price, and you describe, which aspects of the job you want done. Really look at them and notice, be very observant about their appearance, the way they speak, the way they carry themselves. They have a uniform on. Is the name on the shirt? Are they comfortable and confident in what they're talking about? It's a lot of that can help you kind of determine what type of contractor this is, or, how the job's going to go. Do your due diligence ahead of time. Look their company up on the internet. I mean, with the internet these days, you can pretty much should be able to find out a lot about a company and, what type of work they do, if there's reviews or past customers, or even how the website looks and feels. How long have they been in business? And I ask myself that, like, does it matter how long a business has been in business? We've been in business since 1850 or whatever length of time, but it's like, how much does that really matter? I guess it kind of depends, but there is something to a company that's been in business for a long time. You figure they have to be doing something right to be able to stay in business that long, number one. Any warranties or guarantees that they're going to give you, in my opinion, is more valid. If you get a 10-year warranty from a company that's been in business for 2 years, I don't know. If they've been in business 15 years and giving you a 10-year warranty, it means a little more, So really think about, I guess it's just one thing that you in the consideration process, seeing if they're licensed, looking up that license on the CSLB website. It stands for California State License Board, CSLB.com, and check out their license if it's active. It also will tell you more information if it's ever been revoked or whether they have insurance or not. So that can be helpful. And just compiling all the information, putting it together to get kind of a picture of what's going to happen and how this job's going to go down. Because I think anybody or any contractor, or even unlicensed or whatever, can come in and give you a price and you're looking at a number. And that's really not the only thing to consider. And, a lot of people say, well, okay, get 3 estimates and there should be, a low one and a high one and take the middle one. Or, you're thinking, well, this guy's the highest price. He must be the best, or even the cheapest guy. Maybe something's going to go wrong, but you can't just go by that. There's so many other factors to consider. And I want you to be thorough and conscious of what this process is and what's happening while they're there. You have a chance to ask a lot of questions and really get a good, solid first impression of the contractor and whether they should hire them or not. So I wanted to talk about that and it kind of ties in with the next couple subjects that I wanted to talk about, which is, how these jobs end up working out. And if it were a paver job or had to do with landscaping, people have certain experiences with certain products based on what they know and what their own experiences have been, which is in direct relation to who you hired, to do that job. So take pavers, for instance. If people that have had bad experiences with pavers think that that's what pavers are. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. For instance, I got a call about gophers. I was like, okay, well, do gophers go underneath the pavers and dig holes and mess them up? I don't want to, or they were thinking that that's what was going to happen if they installed pavers. And when I did more questioning, there was no road base put underneath the pavers. It was just sand. And then the pavers were laid on that, so the gophers can get right in there and mess up the paver. So that was their experience. To do it correctly, if you had compacted the soil, put in Class 2 road base, which is a mix of rock, concrete dust, sediment. It's this material that compacts extremely hard, and then you wet it and plate compact it over and over again until it's basically solid, almost like similar to concrete in a way. When I walk across road base that's been installed correctly, it kind of feels like you're walking on concrete. We have literally had 0 issues with gophers getting underneath pavers in a lot of years of doing it, and no one's ever called me and said, hey, the gophers are digging up the pavers. And I think it's due to the fact that the road base is so hard and compact, and what it's made out of, they're going to chip a tooth, hopefully, or some try to get into that area. There's very little moisture underneath there. The gophers are looking for the easiest thing to dig and a place to push their piles. And if it's sand underneath their pavers, that's going to be really easy for them to get under there. They're going to want to live under the pavers. But done correctly, it's a non-issue. And so also, well, let's just say tomorrow's the first time I've ever heard of it, and the gopher does actually get under there, undermine the base even, or somehow chews through it and disrupts the pavers. They can be put back. Because they're pavers, it's an interlocking system. You can remove a few. You could replace the damage there and put them back. And so, the biggest thing for me with the pavers is the tree roots. And tree roots will break concrete. They'll lift up pavers. They'll lift foundations of homes. They get in sewer lines. So tree roots, I think, are the biggest real enemy against any hardscaping and concrete or patios or whatever it is. But again, pavers are repairable. You can pull that section of pavers up, cut the tree root out, put the pavers back. If you love that tree, you're not taking that tree out. Why would you remove the concrete and re-pour concrete again when you know that tree's staying there? Especially then, knowing that the tree roots are going to grow back. Again, pavers makes a lot of sense. So sometimes I hear things that are misnomers, and people have experiences. They think that's how it is, and it's due to having a bad experience with a contractor or having them not install correctly to begin with. Another thing is weeds. The weeds are going to get in there. I just assume, because I've been doing this for so long, that I figure, well, everybody knows about polymer sand. Everybody knows, pavers don't get weeds in them anymore. But, maybe that's not true. Maybe someone had an experience years ago or whatever, didn't know about polymer sand, or the contractor didn't know about polymer sand or whatever. And you had a lot of weeds growing all because there's tons of little lines and cracks all the way through the whole paver job. And that's all the places weeds can all grow in there. Now, one thing, if they do grow in there, let's say you have pavers that doesn't have polymer sand, or the polymer sand's broken down over time, or water, runs there from the rain gutters and wash the sand out. If a weed grows in there, you want to pull it right away or spray it or kill it, however, because as benign as they seem, you see a little grass growing in between the pavers or a weed or something, they can actually get in there and really pull those pavers apart. It never ceases to amaze me, the little tiny grass, a clump of grass growing, along the edge. Usually when I see it, it's along the base where the concrete meets the pavers, or there's something meeting coming up to them. And if it's growing in there, it'll actually separate the pavers and push them apart. It's amazing how strong roots are. I was a travel around the U.S. and stuff. I've seen like where the bluffs are by the Great Lakes, and you get these cedar trees that grow. They start from a seed and a little sprout, and they get in between this solid rock and grow. So plants are tough. I see them in the middle of the road growing in the, on this blacktop essentially, and not on the road in between the curb and the blacktop. So they're tenacious, and they can be aggressive, and they can actually separate the pavers. So if you do get them by chance, or if you don't have polymer sand, get them out of there, spray them, and then reinsert the polymer sand again. And, you got to wet it down a little bit slowly so it doesn't wash out, and get that polymers to harden. And then you really should have no more issues with that. Another thing, pretty common question that we get is about taking the concrete out. So two things I want to talk about on that. The cost of removing the concrete, because there is a pretty common belief that that's going to cost a lot of money to take this concrete out. I don't want to do it. And then they kind of put a roadblock on the project, thinking that it's going to be really expensive to take concrete out. So it's really not that expensive. It should be somewhere between, say, $1.75 and $2.25 a square foot to remove the concrete. So figure an average of $2 a square foot to remove the concrete. So really, it depends on how much you have, I guess, or what expensive means to you in relative terms, but 10 by 10 area, 100 square feet should really be $200 to remove that concrete. So not the end of the world. And it's much better, I think, because some people they'll tell me, can you color it or stain it or just, make it look better? And then we're going to add pavers to this other section. And I say, well, if we take the concrete out, it'll all be uniform and, look nice and not have to hodgepodge, And one estimate that I went on recently comes to mind. They said, well, we're going to do a deck over here, and we want pavers here. And they were all kind of small areas. We're going to have a small little deck. We're going to have a small paver section. And then right when I walked out of the back to the patio, there was a big piece of concrete there. So I said, well, you're going to have concrete here, which is existing, and they want to save that because they're thinking, I don't want to take this concrete out. It's already here, even though it was cracked. Didn't look that good. It was just the white, kind of that blah color. And then they wanted to add a section of pavers, and then they were going to do a deck, and then they were going to do a hot tub, So I thought, well, trying to figure out why they were doing the decking, because I think probably because of the hot tub, and I thought maybe it'll be, asked them if the hot tub's going to be down below, or is the deck going to be kind of up and raised? And they were saying, no, we're just going to, have the hot tub's going to be raised up. So I'm thinking, well, why? It was all level. The whole backyard was level. I didn't really see or understand the need for the deck. So I thought, well, in my professional opinion, I like to see things flow, and I like to look like things were meant to be from the beginning. And it's kind of tough when you see like, oh, this old cracked concrete, then a nice, patch of pavers and some decking. And I was just afraid that the design wasn't going to be what they intended it to be in the end result. And that's really my goal, is to make everything kind of flow like it flows together. Could have maybe been put in that way from the beginning when the house was there. And that's the tough thing with concrete, because like if you wanted to stay and have it uniform, they could have just poured more concrete, but the concrete never matches. And that concrete was clearly old, and obviously it cracks. So I recommended taking that piece of concrete out at least and doing the section that they wanted to do in pavers with the section of concrete. And then they would just have deck and pavers. And I think that could look really nice. Or if they didn't want any deck because there really wasn't any need to raise it up. That's the other thing. Decks are for on sloped areas, and you're trying to level it out, and you really don't have any way without building a large retaining wall or something to make an area flat. Then yeah, decks make a lot of sense. So in that case, we gave them 3 options. Now I was able to give them a price right there on the spot, and I don't, unless it's a really complicated estimate, the contractor should be able to give you at least a semblance of a ballpark figure before they leave. And if they can't, that's another clue as to how kind of the job's going to go, and if they're having to go home and think about it and worry about it, and then they call you back with a price, and they come in. Are there going to be upsells and upcharges, change orders, to get what you really want? Or are they telling you everything that you want up front, ahead of time? Very important. Now, let's say the concrete's in good shape. You don't want to take it out, but it's still that bland, white looking, concrete that we all know and don't really love. If there's enough room below the doors, in other words, because what could you put something on top of the concrete? Because I don't want to take concrete out. Can I put pavers on top of the concrete? The answer is yes. You can put pavers on top of concrete. You're basically using that concrete as base. You have to put sand on top of the concrete, and then you can put the pavers on top of the sand. Now, there is a catch, because the pavers themselves are 2 1/4 inches thick, and the sand can be up to 1 inch. It doesn't have to, over the top of road base, it has to be 1 inch of sand and then the pavers. But when you're on top of concrete, you don't need the full 1 inch of sand. So maybe a 1/2 inch, it would be, I think, minimum 1/4 inch. It would be kind of hard to even actually lay. So I would say 1/2 inch, 2 1/4. You're going to be at 2 3/4 inch, figure 3 inches. If you're 3 inches below the doorways, if there's room there along the house, of the concrete's really low, and there's a weep screed that goes along the base of most homes, not all, but if you have a stucco house and you have a metal flashing essentially that goes along the base, you're going to need at least 3 inches below that. I like to be 1 to 2 inches below that weep screed and start the pavers there. So really, realistically, in most cases, the concrete has to come out. It's too high. And that's really what the determining factor is, of whether you can put the concrete, the pavers on top of the concrete, is that if they have enough room to come up 2 3/4, 3 inches, and still be below the bottom of the doorway there. So that's the driveways. There's no way, because all these 99% of them are going to be right there where they need to be at the garage floor. So it would be impossible to put pavers on top of the concrete in that situation. So the concrete does have to be removed. Now, having said that, whatever you put on top of concrete, if it's not an interlocking system, it can have the same problems as concrete. So, but if it's an entry, and you don't want to take out that entrance part, we have done it where we'll tile, because the tiles are very thin. And the thin set that you hold the tiles with does not have to be very thick. So literally, it could be 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and you can just tile that concrete area. Now, tiles can be slippery. So, you got to weigh all your options and kind of think about, okay, what is this worth? $2 a square foot of taking this concrete out, starting over, having a continuous look of the same material coming from, front door to the driveway, or if we're talking about a back patio or whatever. I think it should, to me, the best look is one that's congruous and looks like it could have possibly been built there and been there with the house over time. Not like, oh, you had this porch, and then, oh, you put these pavers in, and then, oh, the driveway's is, this concrete, or, you can kind of, the job starts to feel like that, like you're just adding things through the years. And one thing that I like to do is to avoid that and have some sort of mystery, like, okay, well, it could have possibly been done from the beginning this way. We do a lot of jobs where we work overtime. Not everybody can afford to do the entire job all at once. And so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, let's do this phase 1, year later, 2 years later, phase 2, a couple years later, phase 3, whatever. But having it still look, what makes it look like it could have all been done at one time is using the same materials. It's real basic and it's effective. And in fact, I'm thinking of another job we have coming up where we did the back patio. We used brown charcoal Euro cobbles with a gray charcoal border. And now the customer wants a front patio and was asking me, should we change the materials? I was thinking about, flagstone or these stepping stones, and, I want to do something different. And I was like, well, it'll always look different, every time you look at it, every time you walk back there. I recommended that we go with it. They still make brown charcoal Euro cobbles at Airval, and they make the gray charcoal borders. I said, if we do that and tie that around to the front, because he also wanted a patio and then a walkway to the front door, and then it was adding a gate there into the back. So if you walked from the back patio through the gate to the front patio, it's all the same material. When was it installed? Nobody knows. Okay, we will be right back on the other side of the break.
You're listening to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on California's Central Coast. Here on 1240 AM and 99.5 FM, KSMA.
This show is brought to you by Airval Block. Concrete paving stones or pavers are not all created equal. Airval block pavers are created from a dry mix of gravel, sand, cement, and color. With very little water used, they're super strong. They won't crack or fade. And to be an Airval block paver, the gravel and sand come from right here on the Central Coast, supporting our local community. Airval Block is the only local manufacturer of concrete masonry products like pavers, mortarless retaining wall blocks. Airval block products are high quality for peace of mind, and there are many colors to choose from. And if you're not sure which products you need or how to use them, you will always get expert advice from the staff at Airval Block. Products made on the Central Coast for the Central Coast. Visit their fully landscaped outdoor showroom to see the many ways you can use Airval Block products at number 1 Suburban Road in San Luis Obispo. Or go online at airvalblock.com.
If you're thinking about installing a new paver patio or paver driveway, check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetocomehome.com. Serving the Central Coast since 2001, Chaparral Pavers will work with you to get it right and complete the job to your specifications, as customer service is king at Chaparral Pavers. Paver driveways are stylish and durable and guaranteed to never crack. If your old concrete driveway or entryway is a hazardous cracking mess, it's time to call Chaparral Pavers. Go to their website, ilovetocomehome.com. You'll find all the information you need. Check out photographs of past installations and reviews from Central Coast residents who have used Chaparral Pavers. And don't forget, all installations are guaranteed for the life of your home. So check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetocomehome.com. Chaparral Pavers, they'll make you love to come home. Now, back to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on KSMA.
And we're back. Okay, so we are talking about hiring of contractors for these jobs and what to look for and really get a good, solid opinion of them when they come, and look out for appearance and how they speak and experience. And definitely do not be afraid to ask the contractors many questions as you would like about really anything about their history or background or other jobs they've done or how they've handled situations, because a really good contractor is going to welcome that. If they get defensive and what are you asking me this for? Or, I know what I'm doing and all this, I would just stay clear away from that. If they're welcoming to your questions and, oh my gosh, thank you for asking. I love when somebody asks me if I'm licensed. Are you a licensed contractor? Thank you for asking me that, because it's rare and I'm proud of the fact I worked hard to get that and keep it up to date and all the insurances and everything, yes, ask me if I have workers' comp insurance, please. I'm happy to show it to you. I attach it to every estimate that we send out so that people don't have to ask, but I would certainly not be offended if someone asked me, what's the process of laying pavers, or how do you plan on doing this, and where have you done this in the past, or what are the challenges have been with that, or if they're talking about a bad experience of clients that they've had that, they don't know what they're doing, and I'm the contractor and I know what to do. No, you're paying them to do a job for you. You should feel comfortable, welcome in your own home. There should be clear set timelines of when they're going to start, when they're going to finish. I mean, really, it's so important in communication. So if you're having a hard time communicating with them during the estimate, that's a really big clue that you may not want to work with that person, because when it comes to the middle of the job, or they're not showing up and you're trying to find out, what's going on, and the communication is not going to get any better. Generally, it's just they're going to be on their best behavior during the estimate when they're trying to impress you to get the job. At least they should be trying to impress you. So we were also talking about bad experiences with paver jobs and why you would have had a bad experience due to an inferior install. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's that product's fault, or that product's going to do that every time. So make sure you ask before you make a decision on what product to use. Was your past experience the best experience that it could have been? And do you possibly still want to use that product? Because it makes a big difference. Pavers that weren't laid correctly are all up and down and loose, and gophers under there and weeds growing. You don't tell yourself, I don't want pavers, because that's what they do. Find out whether that was the correct way of installing it, and if there's issues with that, then that makes sense. Flagstone, for instance, yes, they do move. Yes, weeds grow in between there, and there's all kinds of, they crack and move. And so, yeah, maybe that is the best. Even with the best install, you're still going to have certain problems with those. So, it goes either way, but really do your research and find out, and make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck and the right product. And please get it installed right the first time so that you have the best experience. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
This has been Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers. Go to ilovetocomehome.com to find out more, or call 805-588-6917. And be sure and tune in next week at this same time for Patio Side Chats here on KSMA.